Settle down, brother. This is the Quarter Report powered by ActionSA.com. South Africa is a movie. Welcome to the watch party. The ANC has finally decided what to do about the Democratic Alliance in the Government of National Unity. Their NEC met in the last few days after many postponements, and we are here to tell you both all of the options that they were trying to decide between, including whether or not to jettison the DA from the GNU, what they ultimately decided on, which, breaking news, spoiler alert, is to leave the DA alone, but to try and bring more parties into the Government of National Unity to dilute and reduce the DA's power within the GNU. So on today's show, we're going to talk about that, as well as this bombshell development, because the IDT, their CEO, has just been placed on special leave over an alleged 836 million rand value tender fraud involving supply of oxygen to over 50 hospitals and clinics across the country, a crucial service. It seems like that tender was all dodgy and full of red flags. Last night on our TV show, The Dan Quarter Show, we spoke to one of the crucial investigative journalists who investigated that story from Amabungane's Center for Investigative Journalism, Azara Karim, and we're going to bring you that story. As always, the only place you can watch the full episode is on ActionSA.com. You can also see the link to our merch store, www.3beaniesnetwork.com. Shout out to all the people who've been buying merch, including the merch that I'm wearing right now, the Settle Down Brother ice cream design tee. But people have been getting the plain Settle Down Brother merch also. We're going to get into the WhatsApp line right now, 0607-613-436. Thank you to all of you who have been sending us messages with the country that you are listening to or watching the Quarter Report from. James is back. I'm not solo on the show today. James and George, aka Katmatlala, are in studio with us. Poor James is also wearing my headphones. If you are watching, you will see them now. Those headphones are like a decade old. I did my entire radio career to great success with those headphones. And yes, as you are seeing, the one ear is comically not flat on the ear. James is so touched about this, but your headphones did not click in properly, and so you need to deal with it and monitor my levels.
I would just like to say that I appreciate sentimentality. I get it, but this is not a Mickey Mouse operation we run here.
You're right. It's a George the Cat operation.
We are sponsored by ActionSA.com.
We are licensed by ActionSA. That's true.
You can afford to buy a new pair of headphones after a decade of use.
But they
in terms of ROI,
and they're
you're
good.
No, in terms of ROI, my one ear is colder than the other one.
Yes, but the flap out there is allowing you to monitor the in-studio and the sound line, which is what you need for radio/podcasting.
Is this a radio?
You need to be able to hear that George is causing anarchy with your homemade arts and crafts grade 3 map of the world right now.
Anyway, something that I would like to highlight for the viewers.
Highlight, that's funny.
Yes. Is the map is steadily being filled in a fantastic way. And I really would like to say that this is not a Mickey Mouse operation. This is a very serious professional operation we run here.
Yeah.
Which is why I used green highlighter for the thing.
Yes.
And I learned about where a lot of countries are.
James was literally Googling where most of the countries of the world were before filling them in on the map. He also, by the way, printed a map which doesn't have all the countries in it.
Yeah, we're missing Antarctica.
There's no Antarctica. Many islands are not on that map.
Daniel, where is Liechtenstein?
Liechtenstein. Yes. It's in Western Europe, around about France and Germany and Switzerland.
If you could point on the map right now where it is, I'd be very impressed.
If you had bothered to make a better map, even digitally, we wouldn't have these problems.
I don't know if anyone hasn't figured it out yet, but we are brothers. And that's why this is happening like this.
If you have the ability to make a map for us digitally or a big real one so we can do this properly, it would be great, because James is good at many things, but he's not good at map making. Right.
However, I did just get a lot better at geography, despite the fact that I took a trick.
It is incredible how many people are listening from how many different countries. I'm going to rapid fire read you through, just in the last week or two, all the different countries that have checked in to the Quarter Report, either on the WhatsApp line or in the YouTube comments. We have USA, UK, UAE, Canada, Senegal, Belgium, Namibia, Switzerland, Netherlands, Germany, Cambodia, Australia, Hungary, Thailand, Zimbabwe, South Korea, Sweden, Mozambique, China, Malawi, Martinique, Vietnam, Philippines, Botswana, Lesotho, New Zealand, Ireland, Zambia, Nigeria, Scotland, Taiwan, Ghana, Denmark, Japan, Cayman Islands, Bolivia, Greece, Antarctica. What are you doing there? Liechtenstein, Canada, France, and Peru. Amazing. how many different countries we have. And we're going to start with the Government of National Unity, because we have been waiting for so long as ANC elites have delayed and postponed National Executive Committee meetings, pretty much the highest decision-making body within the ANC, because Ramaphosa and one of his close allies, Secretary General Fikile Mbalula, do not want the ANC to kick the DA out of the GNU, and they feared that over issues such as the budget impasse and others, that a large groundswell majority in the ANC NEC would push for and force the president to kick the Democratic Alliance out of the Government of National Unity. We have covered extensively on this show already about how they're basically in a game of chicken. Neither wants to be the one to, the ANC doesn't want to be seen to kick the DA out of the GNU, and the DA doesn't want to be seen to leave the GNU. They want to be kicked to prove their argument that the ANC doesn't know how to govern and gets rid of enemies or people trying to hold them accountable at the second, the literal second that those groups try to hold the ANC accountable and limit the excesses of their power. So we've been waiting for this NEC meeting. It has finally happened, and we finally have some phenomenal reporting on how that happened. You know, on this show, we credit journalists and we love journalists who do great work. Today, in particular, I want to thank the digital politics editor from Times Live, who's done absolutely phenomenal reporting on this, named Lizeka Tandwa. So the NEC met, and they considered 5 different options for what they call a reset and redefining of the GNU. And these were canvassed by the GNU task team led by Fikile Mbalula during the NWC meeting, that's the National Working Committee in the ANC a few weeks ago. Here are the 5 options that the ANC had. And I'd love to hear what you think, if you're an ANC supporter or an anti-DA person, what you think they should have done. 1, remove the DA from the Government of National Unity and invite ActionSA, BOSA, and the National Coloured Congress, the NCC, to join it. 2, retain the Democratic Alliance, but include the 3 small parties that worked with the ANC during its attempt to pass the budget. That's the 3 I just mentioned. 3, enter into a supply and confidence agreement with the economic freedom fighters. You may remember us as a country learning what supply and confidence agreements were back when the GNU was being formed. The way that it works is, for a quick refresher for you, that if a government or if the biggest party in a country doesn't have enough support to form a majority government, and remember, they've formed a majority government by pooling all the votes of all the GNU members. But say the ANC chose to govern on its own with its 40%. Then it could have entered a supply and confidence agreement with another party where on motions of no confidence and on supply, which means budget votes, they'd get a smaller party who's not formally in alliance with them to vote with them to protect the government in votes of no confidence and to get through budgets so the government can operate, so that it can function, in exchange for, in this hypothetical, maybe giving the EFF positions of power. Remember when there was that moment when people were trying to figure out if they would make Malema deputy president of the country and stuff like that. Never happened, but that's the idea. So that was the 3rd option. The 4th option was forming a minority government, as I've just described, but without a supply and confidence agreement. And the 5th one was collapsing the government and holding fresh elections, which I don't think that they would ever do, because the ANC is at an even lower ebb right now than they even were back in 2024, where people were voting for another Ramaphosa term. There was no budget mess. There was no Mkhwanazi mess. It would be way worse for the ANC to go to the polls right now. So, NEC insiders who spoke to the Times said after the meeting yesterday that they had decided to expand the Government National Unity and force the Democratic Alliance to leave on its own. They said they want to make the conditions for the DA unbearable should ActionSA, BOSA, and the NCC wish to take executive roles in key departments. These 3 parties are the bane of the DA's existence. ActionSA, led by Herman Mashaba, the former DA mayor of Johannesburg, has literally stolen the DA's lunch in different parts of South Africa and has set themselves up in explicit opposition to the Democratic Alliance. One of their big leaders, Michael Beaumont, is also ex-DA. Look into why he left the DA. It involves John Steenhuisen and a little bit of a romantic, let's just say, back and forth. ActionSA and the DA hate each other, and the DA sees ActionSA as a serious threat to the DA's voter base. BOSA is Musi Maimane's pet project. Musi, the ex-leader of the Democratic Alliance, who, even though they've tried to write his name out of history as a bad leader in the Democratic Alliance, got 1 million more votes in 2019 facing Ramaphosa round one and all that Ramaphosa than Steenhuisen did just 1 year ago. So they hate BOSA, they hate each other. And the National Colored Congress, the NCC, is coming for colored voters for the DA across the country, but particularly in certain areas of the country where there are large colored communities and populations. And all of ActionSA, BOSA, and the NCC in particular have said, screw the DA over and over again in no uncertain terms. So the idea for the ANC to bring these three in and give them significant, powerful roles in the GNU is to basically make it intolerable for the DA to stay, and again, to dare the DA to walk, or rather dare the DA to stay. Because if they make it so impossible for the DA to justify to its own voters that they will work with these three parties, then they'll go a really long way to getting the DA to basically hoist themselves by their own petard. A wonderful phrase. I don't know what a petard is or how you would be hoisted by one, but it is something that I have known for a long time from things like Pirates of the Caribbean level. Although I don't know if anyone was hoisted by their petard in Pirates of the Caribbean, but it's that kind of era of literature that I read.
I have no words on the word petard, but I do have words on the GNU, if you'll allow me. This moment kind of reminds me of the Cold War. It feels like Russia versus America. They're throwing barbs at each other. We've had a couple of Cuban Missile crises previously, specifically around like the budget vote and stuff like that.
Can I just say quickly, this is probably not on camera, but George the cat has got into a Woolworths bag and by mistake stuck his head through one of the handles. So he's now both trapped in the bag and wearing it like some kind of superhero cape. And I don't think he can move. So James, finish your GNU point while our third co-host, can I just say Cyril the Squirrel would never, ever commit such unprofessional shenanigans.
The shenanigans are shenanigans again.
They are shenanigans again.
So it feels like a Cold War moment where we've had so many Cuban Missile crises with these two, and they keep finding new ways to push against each other without actually directly engaging, which is really frustrating for all of us, not for them. But there's also something so petty that the ANC has done now by calling on all these people who are going to irritate them, because it's not just the fact that going, oh, we can replace you with your rivals. It's allowing the rivals into those meetings. So all of these people who are going to be coming into this arrangement are going to be in those meetings. They're going to get onto those boards and they're going to be fighting with the DA directly within the room, not just shouting from outside. I can't remember who's initially said it, but it was something to the effect of, why are you heading from outside the club when you can't even get in?
Fikile Mbalula. He was saying, don't you remember?
Oh, I was talking about the original song, but yes.
Oh, no. Fikile Mbalula went to a boxing match of like one of the big boxers overseas, and someone was saying that he was reneging on his duties as sports minister, and he said something to the effect of, where are you? Are you inside the venue or outside?
That is an incredible way to flex on South Africans that you spent
all that government money
to go watch a boxing match on your own for your own time.
George has figured out how screwed he is. So it's very clear that the DA is going to get extremely upset about the ANC approaching these three smaller parties who the DA and they mutually hate to join the GNU. They're going to say things like, oh, this is not in the spirit of the Government of National Unity, that agreement that we made, that glorified Word document that everyone pinky swore that they would follow. And then they said that they'll say something like the GNU as a whole needs to agree on what new political parties will be invited to join. The ANC will respond by saying, no, the point of the GNU is big tent. We're trying to get as many different parties as possible to represent as many South Africans' wishes as possible. And they will go on and do that. And that's where more of this kind of brinkmanship that James is talking about will happen. Particularly funny, by the way, that you compared it with the Cold War. Because if we're wondering who's Russia and who's America between the DA and the ANC, I think it is extremely clear which one it is. So let's start with ActionSA. Their chairperson, Michael Beaumont, has been quoted as saying that they have not seen the GNU to be a vehicle capable of delivering change in its present form, but, quote, while we would not want to speculate on engagements that have not happened, should such an engagement transpire, ActionSA's considerations will be based on whether our involvement will bring about much needed reforms in our country. So pretty much saying we're up for chats. We're keen to engage depending on what would happen. I will circle back to, once again, Herman Mashaba's quote around last year's election when he said that the ANC mustn't call ActionSA for the next something like 200 years because the ActionSA wouldn't work with the ANC for the next 200 years. Never trust a politician when a kind of promotion or potential benefit is on the line. Then NCC leader Fadil Adams said that, he said, of course, and remember a year ago, he said that they would be keen on joining the GNU, but not if the DA was in it. He accused them of having regressive policies. I think him or someone else basically said that having the DA in the GNU was like having apartheid in the GNU, if I remember correctly. It may not have been him, but it was someone in that kind of... No, I think it was Fadil Adams in that kind of orbit. The direct quotes about this is, we will have a look at what he has said, that's from BOSA, and if an invitation to join the GNU and contribute to the upliftment of all our people is made, we will surely discuss it. The GNU in its current form is a dead horse, and I think perhaps it needs an injection of new blood. But he then went on to say, he said his party has now matured since taking a position in parliament since last year. And he said that while they disagree on most things with the DA, quote, a year later, perhaps we are a little more mature and we understand that the DA is not the GNU. I'm sure most progressive parties think the same way, that the DA is not the GNU. It is really interesting that that alleged progressive group of opposition parties that allegedly was going to coalesce, like MK and NCC and who else, the EFF, who were all pretty much ideologically inconsistent, except that they didn't get into the GNU and were anti it. One of their members, like the NCC, at the first chance of joining the Government of National Unity is like, yeah, about that. Maybe we can be the fresh blood that makes the GNU not a dead horse. So then Maimane has been quoted about potential BOSA. BOSA joining the GNU. Maimane has been quoted as saying, the mistake that we don't want to make is to end up on the bus, but not clear where the bus is trying to get us to. And the net consequence of that is that you can be a passenger on the bus, but you are not committed to the destination. Were we to get into a ministry, it needs to have economic dividends for the people of South Africa. Once again, thank yous to Lizeka Tandwa from Times Live for that great reporting that we really appreciate. So where does this leave us? The DA is going to be really upset, but not want to walk on their own. They're going to want to be kicked, but they're going to be really upset that these three parties are going to be approached. The DA will also be really upset because every time you add a new group, a new party to the GNU, that diminishes the relative power of all the other parties in the GNU because it makes them a smaller voting bloc within the GNU. And remember, even as the ANC had a historically terrible election last year, their portion of the GNU, they got nearly twice the number of votes of the second biggest party in South Africa. They're 39-40 versus the DA's 21, makes them by far still the largest party in South Africa. And just within the GNU, still the ultimate lead and decision maker. And so they will be diluted a little, but everyone else stands, the much smaller parties, including the DA, stand to lose much more bargaining power. And this now starts to tend to a direction where the ANC could potentially get stuff done and get stuff through Parliament with the rest of the GNU, even as the DA withholds and disagrees. That is potentially where we are now going. And if the ANC manages to pull that off, suddenly the DA doesn't have the power within the GNU to impress upon its voters that it can stop ANC bad behavior. They will still have their ministers, through which they'll be able to do good PR for themselves and accrue, appreciation from the South African public because of those ministers' work, but significantly, they will have far less authority and sway within the GNU.